blood rolled everywhere. His legs hurt too much to stand. He looked tired and a little sad. Many people walked past. A man in a suit looked at his watch and hurried by. A woman with a stroller saw the mess and crossed the street. Two teenagers glanced at the man, then kept walking and laughing at their phones. Eli stopped. He thought about the park, but then he remembered something his teacher had said about the parable of the Good Samaritan that Jesus Christ taught. Sometimes loving means stopping. So he knelt down and asked, "Are you okay?" A small act and a big heart. What Eli did, he picked up the bread, tied the broken back with a spare shoelace, helped an old man to his feet, walked him safely home, and became a good Samaritan. Thank you for stopping. Many people saw me, but you were the one that helped. Eli smiled back. It didn't take long. But as he ran to the park, he felt something better than playing. He felt joy. The simple lesson. Just like in the parable of the Good Samaritan, loving others means notice. Seeing the people around you who need help. Stop. Pause, even when you're busy. Show kindness. A small act of love can change someone's whole day. Sometimes the most important thing you can do is stop.
Good morning, church.
Good morning.
Thank you for giving me this opportunity to speak to you. One time there was a church volunteer called Daniel, and Daniel was invited to give a talk to the youth about kindness and service. And just like in the story that Heaven told, when Daniel, the next day, he overslept. He was in a hurry to go. So he skipped breakfast. He kept on looking at his watch as he was running to his car, to the bus station and walked by. He kept on moving. And as he came, he found a man by the rocks, by the table, seated on the bench. He looked gloomy, and the man called out for help. And Daniel came close, but he looked at his watch because this talk was very important. The youth were already there. He was waiting. And Daniel just said, "I'm sorry, someone else will help you," and rushed off. And he goes inside. He was clearly late. And in his disorganized state, he opens the book of Matthew, and he starts telling us about the story in chapter 10 from verse 25 to 37, the story of the Good Samaritan. And as Daniel is telling this story about the idea of being a neighbor and compassion, Daniel just remembered what happened 5 minutes ago. He had just walked past a neighbor. It wasn't that Daniel did not care. It wasn't that he did not believe. It wasn't that he did especially believe in compassion. Daniel, in this case, was in a hurry. The clock that he put on became louder than compassion. And today, I want to tell you about intentions and time pressure, looking at exactly the idea that when we are under pressure, when we don't have margins, we slaughter compassion at the pulpit. Let's pray. Gracious, loving Father in heaven, I thank you for this opportunity that you've provided me to speak to your children. Lord, who am I to stand before we sinful people and a God that is over all loving, almighty? Forgive me for my shortcomings. Forgive me for the sins that I've committed. Empower me with your word. Lord, illuminate in me your mind so that I speak to your chosen children. Let your spirit settle them so that every word that you have impressed on my mind doesn't go wasted. Let it give them a thought, a change of heart, a perception that will make them draw closer to you. Let my brothers and sisters and me leave this place today convinced that we have drawn closer to you because of the revelations that you're going to give us today. And so, Lord, let your presence be in this holy sanctuary. This I pray in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen. Today, I want to tell us a story that I picked from the book of Matthew. A young man, a lawyer, not a lawyer in the modern days like we look at today, came to Jesus and posed a question to Jesus. Who is your neighbor? For us who are reading it today, we may be a bit confused because we are reading about it in the Greek translation. And the Greek translation actually elucidates the idea that Jesus builds in the book by talking about a neighbor, being anyone in need, because that's what the Greek meant. But in the Hebrew, in which the man was asking and the perspective that he had, a neighbor meant someone who is associated with you. In essence, the Jews interpret a neighbor as a kindred, someone who has your bloodline, and any other person is not a neighbor. And so Jesus now says, no, that is wrong. And he uses an illustration of a man who is moving from Jerusalem to Jericho. It's a winding road full of people who are going to attack you, and sure enough, they attacked him. We don't know whether this man was a Jew, a Samaritan, a priest, or anything. We do not know, but we think he was not a Levite and he was not a priest, because if he was, perhaps the people who came by would have helped him. But they didn't. So the first person who comes is a priest. And the priest passes by this man, but he's tied under time pressure. He cannot look at himself, and he passes by this man who is clearly in need. The man was survived just by the whisker or by the teeth of his, the skin of his teeth. Why am I changing that word? The teeth of his skin. And he passed by. Another man came, a Levite. He also passed by. He was in a hurry. Both of them were in a hurry. Now, the Levites and priests are related. All priests are Levites, but not all Levites are priests, because the priests were from the tribe. They were from the line of the Levites, but the priests were special. The only ones who came from the line of what? Of Aaron. Not even Moses, who was a prophet. One of the greatest prophets that you can talk of, Moses, Samuel, because God says twice in Jeremiah and in Ezekiel, even if you bring people like Moses and Samuel to pray for you, I will not forgive you. So these are people who are on top, and that's why God hid the body of Moses, because the Jews were going to worship Moses. It was like they were getting a reincarnation of that. But even him, he couldn't perform the obligations of a priest. So they were in a way related. There came a time when the kingdom of Israel got divided between the southern and the northern kingdom. They first took the northern kingdom to Assyria, and later on Babylon took the southern kingdom. And when they took the kingdom, there's a group of people that remained. The sick, the lame, the people whom they couldn't find. They wanted young, energetic, intelligent people of royalty to be the ones that they could take. So the Samaritans were the ones who remained. But you know, in those days, whenever there was a conquering of a place, they would leave people and make sure that you intermarry and you lose yourself. So the Samaritans represent a group of people who intermarried. At that time, being a Jew meant a pure bloodline, having a mother and a father who is a Jew. So the people who went, when they came back, despised the Samaritans. And the Samaritan comes. When he comes, he paused, saw, and then had compassion. He banded the wounds that the man had, carried him and placed him on his donkey and took him to the inn, which was equivalent to a hospital, and paid for all his treatment and gave extra and said, please do take care of him, and in case this extra is not enough, I am going on a journey. I'll come back and meet you. And when he came, we don't know how the story ended, but we suspect that that was a good story. And so Jesus poses the question and says, who was your neighbor? And it seems the first person to answer that was the person who asked the question. He couldn't bring himself to even talk about this man's heritage. He would be comfortable to talk about the man being a Levite or a priest, but he says, the good man, was your neighbor. And today, I want to tell you that in 1973, several centuries later, a group of two professors came up and did a study on the Good Samaritan. And the key thing that they were looking at was time pressure. So they got seminary students and they taught them about the Good Samaritan, about the essence of the story. And this is being taught by the best professors in the world. And afterwards, they then told them to prepare a sermon about the Good Samaritan story. And they prepared a sermon. They divided them into three groups. One group was going to preach about the Good Samaritan. The other group was going to preach about the jobs that the seminarians would get after that. There were 65 students. And then the other group, they were taken. So they took them. Every one of them came. But in these three groups, they divided them in one. They told them they were already late. And they told them that they have to come. The other group, they told them, you have a bit of time, take your time, it's okay, come in. And the last group, they told them, you are way in time, take your time. And they made it in such a way that when you're going to go to the presentation room, probably, let's say that the man was put in that corridor towards the toilet, and they placed a man who was in dire need, who was in distress. So there was no way you would pass through that corridor without jumping over the man. So each of them, they observed who helped the man and who didn't help the man. And the results were this. They found out that 65% of the people who were hurried did not help the man. Even when there were seminary students who have been told about compassion and kindness, they didn't help. They jumped or skipped over the man, went to the pulpit like the story of Daniel, and preached the story of who is your neighbor. A story about kindness, about helping everyone. And they were comfortable with it. The group that was not hurried, about 45% of them helped. Did not help. Helped. 65% of the group that was hurried did not help. 45% of the group that was there helped. Only 10% of the, did I mix the results? 10% of the group that was hurried helped. You understand? So the point here was that when you are hurried, you will go to the pulpit and forget about the essence of the pulpit. You will have the knowledge. You'll have the knowledge of the law, but you will lack the spirit of the law. And that's why I've titled today, When the Clock is Louder Than the what? When the clock is louder than compassion. And that is the story. And I want us to get some insights about this story and look at some details about this story that we can pick. And many of us probably will find ourselves in such a position. In such a position, before you categorize or blame this priest and Levite and the students from the Harvard Study, which is now called the Good Samaritan study. Let's first pause and find ourselves and tickle certain things about them. We live in a world that has so many things going on, much more than even when I was born just a few years. Majority of you were born way before I was born. You probably used horses and so forth. I was talking about the one who rode. But even in my time, we read books. We went to theaters and paid attention. We went for photography and looked. Today, people don't care. You just keep on doing and you'll edit. You take a camera and all these things. So our minds are so clouded. There's something that you do. I had TV which came on at a certain time. And it closed it starts at 5, by 9 it is closed. It was black and white. So nature was more beautiful than staying in the room. So our minds are very clouded with so many things. And in this cloudedness of our mind, we find that many things get missed by us. We move and fail to see people who are in distress, who need kindness, people who need our support, because our objective is to run and help somewhere. Let me read for you what Ellen G. White tells us about helping. Ellen G. White reminds us that Christ's work is to bring men into sympathy. That's Christ's work. To bring men into sympathy with suffering humanity. That's the sole reason why Christ came here. It's because we were suffering. And that's why some people who misrepresent the three angels' message and think it is only to talk about theology minus the humanity in the theology miss it. Christ did not come here to tell us about theology. Our great-grandfather was told that by angels, by Christ himself. Christ came because he saw what the effect, the stupidity, the idiocy of their decision had on them. And therefore he came to die for you and for me. And therefore, he says, Ellen G. White here, the one who writes this, tells us we have to bring men into sympathy with suffering what? Humanity. But sympathy, or this sympathy we're talking about, requires attention. And Christ paid attention. Are we saying that? Attention requires us to make margins. When I talk about margin, I'm just saying, in your day, create an opportunity, a time, where you can answer or help someone else. So we need to create margins. Those margins are the ones that are going to help us. The objective shouldn't be to preach the message. The objective should be that the message should help us draw closer to God. And therefore, this is what happens. We fail because we are hurried. We fail because our mind is so clouded with deadlines, with so many things, that at the end of the day, we are not present. We are not in that space. We are always thinking about something ahead of us than being present in that time. And we miss out on that. Our minds are and here we find that the priest probably thought about what he was going to do in the temple. I don't know. Where's the feedback? Could it be this? I take off this now. You don't. So the priest's mind, So the priest's mind, thinking about what he was going to do, you understand? And it was good, it's not bad what we are going to do. The things that we do here to make us comfortable and be prepared to receive the message of God is important. The seminary students were thinking about, this is my spot. I'm going to meet my professors. I'm going to make a difference. This is what I've been working for. You understand that? The leaders in this church, everything has to be, we have to open on time, we have to do this, these things have to be prepared, we have to practice the songs and so on. And when there are no musicians and so on, you can see what happens here. Some of the keys are too high for us and we have not synchronized them. Everyone finds himself resting. But we rest past the person who needs support, past the person who is in distress. We do not see that wounded man because our minds are racing towards the next obligation. And here we can see that the enemy of love is actually distraction, not cruelty. We are not inherently bad, as we may think, but we are distracted. And Satan has mastered that level of making us always distracted. Distracted to the level that you are going to find that we have theologized and made Harry a gospel. One time we had a party. My uncle was getting married, my younger uncle, almost my age mate. And the elder one, who is supposed to be the father, every time we called him, John, I'm busy. John, I'm busy. John, even before you say anything, he became so busy. And busy is a language that most of us have. Go to the youth ministries when we're organizing anything. Everyone would be so busy. Busy doing, I don't know what. And busy becomes the gospel. It's almost the only thing that you hear in that and come out that I had the word busy. So we find ourselves in this state of being so busy. And when we're talking about being hurried, we're not talking about being hurried to show the speed with which we move. We are talking about almost a state that we have found ourselves, always in a rush. And therefore, we find that our lives are totally distracted. Our lives are always pressured. And consequently, when we find things in place, when we find people who need help, the people become obstacles to us. You understand that? We miss them because we see them affecting our intention, the KPIs, meeting, the pulpit, and everything. I can tell you something. Let me tell you something. Let me digress a bit. Did you know that Adventist sermons are becoming shorter and shorter? But do you know that the Pentecostals are increasing their level of sermons? Because at the end of the day, if you give me only 15 minutes, what do you expect in 15 minutes? Do you expect me to talk about prophecies in 15 minutes? They have sermons going for 1 hour and a half. You elaborate everything. People come from there very much convinced. And some of us who are preachers on the high and come once, how are we going to build on those? Either we're going to leave the elders and pastors a lot of work because we leave things hanging. We don't have time to bring out the emotions, the beauty of the sermons because we are looking at the time pressure. And then those interruptions feel like threats. The church will not be the same. We've moved away from the old-time church that we had because people are distractions. Now we are looking at them as what? As threats. And therefore, compassion becomes and feels like an inconvenience. We find ourselves that it's not that we lack mercy. We simply can't afford the time that mercy requires. Why? People are obstacles. Those interruptions feel like threats. And compassion is an inconvenience. Can I tell you something? Ladies and gentlemen, every distraction that Jesus had, it became a miracle. Did you know that? Every distraction, the last route that Jesus took when he crossed the Jordan, he had interruption. Jairus' daughter, blind Bartimaeus, Zacchaeus, all those people who interrupted him when he was going to the greatest mission, to die for you and me, they were distractions. But each distraction is the miracle that we talk about today. So learn to sit down, pause, enjoy the distraction, because that in itself is the miracle, is the testimony about the goodness of God. The man, the Samaritan, it is said that when he came, he saw, and then he had compassion, because he was present. He was present in that moment. My eldest daughter, Genesis, I always tell her, learn to be present in that moment. She has a tendency sometimes to switch off, distract herself by hair and so on. Say, learn to enjoy the moment. Be in that moment. You understand? I always tell people, and I like Australia, by the way, in terms of time management. I told someone that Australia is not as it is in Germany. In Germany, I was supposed to go and meet my professor, who was about 20 minutes away. Who was about 5 to 10 minutes away, and I was 20 minutes to go. And when he made a phone call and he overheard my voice, it was a big problem. You find that we value time so much that we forget the presence of the people. In fact, time management has become a culture for us rather than being present. This man was present. He saw. The Samaritan had something that others lacked. He noticed because he was present. Noticing is not just something that is passive. It is a spiritual discipline. You must discipline yourself to see certain things. You understand that? I am an economist by training. I look at data, and when I look at data, so many things. I look at the car park, I look at how you are, how you're dressed, and so on, and I generate a lot. Many people will look and they will not see anything. When I'm looking, I will structure by age, by sex, by dressing, and so on. It's a mind that has been trained for almost 10 years and in practice for almost 20 years. You need to inculcate in your life the discipline that would enable you to notice people who are in need. It doesn't come naturally. We move every day and you don't see anyone. Someone will come here and say, oh, but Pastor was smiling all the way. And the next thing you hear, and God forbid, Pastor, he committed suicide. And then you say, but you were smiling. It's because you were not present to notice. And that is a discipline that we must calculate. The kingdom of God will never be missed because you were not at the pulpit. But it will be missed because you didn't notice, you didn't see someone by the roadside. So the sequence was, he saw, because he was present. He therefore had the opportunity. The Spirit of God could inculcate, could stir in him the need for compassion. And then he knelt down, bandaged the man's wound, carried him, met the cost, and promised to return. Pastor, you were into project management. There was no feasibility study. There was no plan. It was just a distraction. And it is now the standard that Jesus doesn't give that standard to the priest or to the Levite or to the Jews. The standard of compassion and kindness is given to that person who was othered, rejected, a Samaritan, because he was present. And my brothers and sisters, I want you, I beg you, I beseech you, I pray, learn to be present. Even for me who stands at the pulpit, if your presence is there, the Spirit of God will make you see deep into the things that are going on in my life. The facade that I put on by my dress, by my smiles, will go away because the very image of God will be with you. And we've seen people who have come and told him, brother, the Lord has told me to say this. Why? Because the Lord, they have disciplined themselves to hear that voice, and they can speak life and reformation in people's lives. So, some questions to many of us who are in the present, in the remnant church. What must we do? Let's not be so focused in preparing sermons that we miss the suffering around us. Remember, the reason why Christ came was because humanity was suffering. So if that sermon is not going to unite the suffering humanity to God, maybe we should pray more to God to give us more understanding so that our sermons make sense. So by organizing evangelism that we fail to evangelize through simple acts of kindness. A friend of mine told me about this lady, an Adventist par excellence by our standards. She's a member of the prayer band and she has been for so long. But many people have complained that she never greets people. She disregards people. And she's wondered, why would someone go to a prayer band and pray for everyone, but you don't have the courtesy of just extending your arm and greeting someone and recognizing their humanity? You see this? Great sermon, great everything, but you miss out. A prayer warrior at that misses out on this. We are so much consumed by metrics. So much. We want, and I'm not saying that metrics, by the way, I think I'm very pedantic. I'm a stickler to standards. You understand that? I'm a stickler to standards. But as I've grown, I have noted, and as I've worked with Adrian, I have noted, and as I've been an Adventist, I heard from others, I see from others, Adventists are missing up on so many things. If you read everything we do, it is okay. Our institutions are collapsing. Yet we are doing everything right. We have more educated people in the system, more experienced people. Maybe we should go back to what the LNG Whites did. And we make sure that we match the matrices to the gospel of kindness, the gospel of compassion, the gospel in boots, to be the hands and feet of Jesus. Ellen G. White warns us that many will be weighed not merely by profession, but by how they treated the least of these. And that's the whole essence of Matthew 25? Is it Matthew 25? Yes. Can I tell you something? Adventists, we preach about the sanctuary. How many fundamentals are there now? Last time I knew there were 29. 28 rather. Have they increased? Okay. We preach all those things, isn't it? We sing and we have changed everything. We talk about the three angels' message. I remember this time, I was a young man, in fact the youngest in my class when I started going to teach in the university. That group has never called me by my name. They only refer to me as that young man. They didn't give me a syllabus. We're happy that Christ in Matthew chapter 20, is it verse 18 to 20, which one is that? He gives us the syllabus. He tells us what to do. But then he tells us about judgment. Judgment is not how many Sabbaths you've kept. Judgment is not about how much vegetarian food or vegan food you've eaten. What is judgment about? How you've helped one another. That's judgment. And that's the least preached on. If we can study the fundamental, the three angels' message, and that message does not bring you to show humanity to your neighbor, then to you, it's useless. It's just like the Jews before they were rejected. You see that? And that's what I'm calling us. I hope I'm not eating. Pastor, forgive me. I didn't plan to say these things the way I've said them. But I am prompted by the Spirit to tell us. And I am talking to myself too. You see that? people do. So I'm giving a solution. I will not just create a problem. One, I have said, build a margin. Protect the space for human responsiveness in our planning. And I'm happy that you guys have one of the most, by the way, you're the most, if not, let me put it this way, let me be courteous enough to other people. You have one of the most successful community programs here. You are known through the bureaucracy, you are known by the community. And can I tell you, 4 years ago, I found out about this church. There are things that are unsundered. Do they say, is that the word? But even with that, you are doing great. But we need every hand to be on deck. Not only others, every one of us should have their hands on deck. So in planning all those things, create time for, in your calendar, time for margin. And what you guys are doing today is one of those things. What Sister Mary told us today, let's preach through our actions. Why do you say things theoretically and practically you fail? Then let these programs be embodied with practice. In the story, the man had orthodoxy, the theory, as Jesus was telling him. But he lacked the orthodoxy of practice. The practice he didn't have. And that's what Jesus was taking him to. And that's what I'm calling you to. Examine the things that constrain us, and let us teach spirituality in a gradual manner. Let me conclude this. Those are the things that I've talked about. So the question that I posed today, the question that I posed today is simple. That not out of malice, but because we are late, not because we lack doctrine, but because our minds were crowded. Today, the Spirit asks a quiet question. What roadside have you hurried past? Ponder upon it as you go today back home. Have you bypassed something? The Good Samaritan did not merely feel compassion. He stopped. He stood. He sacrificed. He incurred cost and delayed his plans. He used his own resources. In doing so, he reflected Christ. Did you see that? He reflected Christ. And I want to just go to the appeal. So what am I telling us today? As I close, I want to say this as encouragement. And I repeat this. We will not be asked how many sermons we preached while rushing past the wounded. We will be asked whether we loved when love was required. And so, what is the story in the Princeton study and in the Good Samaritan? Basically, slow down. Let us slow down. Let us not know how to be present so that we can notice, and then we will be compassionate. Are you seeing that? Reclaim every margin and teach yourself to be spiritually disciplined. These are things that are outside us, and Satan is fighting us. But teach yourself a discipline. Like Paul says, I teach myself like a boxer, so that he doesn't miss out. In fact, Paul cautions and says, how will it be when he has preached to everyone and then he loses it himself? Let's not be like people who have the best messages, but when it comes to us, we fail. Secondly, let us learn to see the humanity in people. Let us learn to be present. Those distractions, as I've told you, they are opportunities, they are testimonies. They are the testimonies, they are the benefits that we see and that we shall see what the Lord has done for us because you noticed. And lastly, let compassion interrupt you. The detour is the destination. The wounded besides you is the call. May God give us a clear mind, unhurried hearts, and the courage to stop when need.